Hey, I'm Jerry Stevenson, Chief Redneck in Charge here at the Redneck BBQ Lab, McGee's Crossroads, North Carolina. And I'm here today to show you how to cook a brisket at home, just like we do at the lab. First thing we start out with here is we have a choice brisket here. I shouldn't say choice because it's prime, but it's one of the briskets that I could tell was a real good one. The way that I knew it was a real good one when I first saw her sitting there in the meat case was, you can see a lot of white little striations going through here, a lot of white lines showing that it's fat. And then if you flip the brisket over, on this brisket right here, you can really see that there's a lot of fat in the middle of this meat. And that's something when we're picking a brisket out of a case, it's something you really want to look for. The second thing you want to look for, like I said, there'll be a little stamp on the back here. This brisket comes from Iowa beef producers, and it's got the USDA Prime stamp on it. And that's kind of indicative of we've got a good piece of meat to work for. So that's the basis, the beginning of making a good brisket at home, just like we do at the lab. These briskets come cryovac. If you buy the brisket by the case will have what they call a packing date on it. The packing date basically means the date that this animal was processed. Beef a lot of times can be aged. It's not like chicken or pork that breaks down very easily. Beef can last in this cryovac package for up to 64 days, or at least I've done it up to 64 days. So sometimes when you get a piece of meat that's in a perfectly good cryovac package that's a little old, it can be a good thing because the lactic acid that's still present in this meat can help break down the tissue inside and make this piece of meat a bit more tender in the end. So the first thing that I do is I trim the sides of the brisket down. The sides of the brisket, there's this little part of it that's kind of a grayish brown part, and it's nothing bad or anything. It's basically just where this piece of meat, the steam hit it to kind of kill the bacteria on the outside prior to the processor hanging it. It's edible. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's just one of those things I take off. Secondary thing is I'm going to move this decal right here. This is a hard fat. This is tallow. This is back in the day they used to make candles out of and something. It's something that doesn't really break down as easy. It's, like I said, it's an inedible product that we just remove here. And there's another reason why we remove it, which I'll talk to later as I get into trimming this up a little bit. Now this brisket, the way that it's put together is there's two muscles here. There's a primary muscle and a secondary muscle. The primary muscle runs this way, as we can see, as evidenced by the grain in this meat that you can see here, and it runs this way. The secondary muscle is underneath this, and the grain runs this way. Why is this important? Very important later on when we go to slice this and you pay attention to when I do it. With the grain running this way, I want to start slicing this piece of meat like this, perpendicular to it going this way, whereas this piece of meat, I want to turn and go back that way. One of the things that I like to do is I take this piece of meat and there's a big piece of fat that's decal that comes underneath here. It's kind of hard to see right here, but you can see it's a big piece of fat. Really hard to render, really hard to break down. So I come in here and I just kind of trace this with my knife. It's just kind of like this. So I trace it like this and start removing some of this fat. Let me show you how. By following this path, this fat seam here, and removing it from the meat, I can separate these two muscles. A lot of times, you just have to take your time and be patient, work the knife. Don't let the knife work you. I've always heard that. And effectively, when I come in here, I can separate these two pieces of meat just like that. This is the fat that I'm talking about right here, this big fat block. You can see the size of it. I like to just go ahead and take my knife and I come back very carefully. Try to make sure that I never point the knife at me when I slice, but sometimes I do. And I remove that piece of meat, or piece of fat. See that right there as well. Well, I've got this piece over like this. There's some fat right here that I'll trim down as well. Kind of see it on the sides. Again, it's something that's kind of hard to render. Takes up a lot of the smoker's energy when it's trying to cook this piece of meat. Then the things I like to do is I'll look at the top of the meat, and any of the big pieces of fat, I will go in and remove them as well. I like to have a clean surface to work on when I'm putting my rub on. You'll see a lot of this stuff on here. It's something that it's called silver skin. It's actually the technical term for it is elastin. Elastin is a product you'll find on the back of ribs and in various other parts of the animals. Elastin is something that doesn't break down in our stomachs. It's something that's passed through, a little bit of science knowledge. But this elastin on a brisket, a lot of times, I will leave. And what that does is it helps hold this brisket together, because we're going to cook this for a very long time, low temperature. But this muscle, as it starts to break down, a lot of the connective tissue starts to separate, and this elastin will actually help keep some of that meat from separating, the strands of meat. Finally, the last thing I like to do is I just like to trim up this point. This is a really good point that we have here. Just kind of get it like that. Now, you can kind of see this is what a trimmed brisket looks like at the lab. Very similar to the one that you can do at home. Next, we will season this brisket. This is one of the techniques that I like to do at home. Why do I put it in a pan? Does it help me create a more even cooking environment? Does it help me capture juices? Does it do this? Does it do that? No, not really. What it does do me here is it helps me keep the seasoning, the excess seasoning that falls off in this pan, and I can throw it away. A whole lot easier to do like that than it is to clean it up off this table, or more importantly, off of your kitchen floor. First thing we want to do is pick out some rubs. Here at the lab, we use a beef rub as well as our all-purpose competition rub. And one of the first things I recommend, kind of a pro tip is if you use this stuff directly out of a bottle, give it a good shake. The stuff settles in here, meaning the ingredients, you'll have salt on the bottom and pepper at the top. And if you don't shake the stuff up, it's very hard to get all the pepper out of your mouth sometimes when you don't afterwards. Other thing that I like to do is I like to use these dredge shakers to season meat with. Gives me a little bit better control. Something I picked up on the competition trail. As well as, I think it helps me disperse out the rub a whole lot better, basically controlling it. So I get an even distribution of it across whatever meat I'm working with. All right. Now, I debated about this part. A lot of times in competition, people just sit there and they watch for any little thing. There is one extra step that we do here at the Redneck BBQ Lab that, as far as I know, no one else does in America. And I'm going to show it to you guys here today. One of the things that we do at Redneck BBQ Lab is a lot of people use something to adhere their spice to the meat with. And it's basically just a base. The most common one that we hear about using out there is mustard. Simple yellow mustard. Right out of a jar, squirted right on it. Here at the Redneck BBQ Lab, one of the secrets of my brisket that I really like to use is this ingredient. Now, I'm almost just wanting to say, provide me a comment below here on the video to let you know what it is. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys today. Some of y'all might have already figured it out. It's black. It's available here in the South, and folks like me love it on our cornbread mix. Yep, you probably figured it out by now. It's what we call blackstrap molasses. Years ago, one of the things that I, thinking about how I wanted to cook meat and stuff like that, I thought about flavors that I liked and flavors that kind of combined and went together. And that was one of the things that I really loved as a kid, was that smell and that taste of blackstrap molasses. And one day, just like how we do our pastrami ribs, I said, what the heck, let's try it. One thing led to another, and there you have it. So now we laid that base of that blackstrap molasses on there. I put on our all-purpose seasoning. I do a really, what I call a liberal coat of this. This seasoning here I developed for my affection as a kid over barbecue corn chips that I believe it was Frito-Lay used to put out. They've since changed their formula, but this right here reminds me of that childhood bag of corn chips I'd open up, and you could smell that hickory and that smoke powder, and it had the salt and probably all those other things that was bad for you, like sugar and MSG. Not saying what's in here is bad for you, but I think we've pretty much got a close rendition of that childhood memory of mine. So, and I use that on baked potatoes and popcorn. I don't think I found a bad use for it yet. Second thing I like to use is our beef rub. Not going to tell you all the ingredients in there. They're on the label, but you can smell it and figure out a lot of it yourselves when you first open it up, and you just get a big whiff of it, and you're like, wow, okay, I know what's in there. And you're probably right. But again, I like to come across, give this another good coating of our beef rub, house beef rub on here. And good coating, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I have my sister for in competition. Our meat, she moves around each little grain of pepper and everything else. Make sure I get the point as well. This part of the meat you'll hear me refer to as the point. That secondary part of the muscle. This part right here, often referred to as the lean or the flat. Both serve a different purpose. One's made for really slicing. Actually, both of them can be sliced, but that point, this part right here, can be made into something else that you guys probably already are aware of. And if you're not, well, I just may show you later. And there you have it. That's how we season the brisket. Next step is, I like to let this sit for about an hour, come up to room temperature, same way you probably would cook a steak at home. Once it's come up to room temperature, I'll put it on my smoker. This brisket right here was about 18 pounds. It's going to take 15 to 18 hours depending on the density of the meat. Barbecue's not perfect science in terms of time, so we're just going to put it on, we'll let it do its business. Hopefully have a good product to pull off.
All right, our smoker's at 231 right now. It's a little hot, but it's okay. It's all right. We're getting ready to put a cold product in there. The temperature's going to drop back down. I know that Guru's going to bring it back up to that 225 that we're smoking at. So let's go ahead and put this brisket on that we've trimmed and let season or sit for an hour. Smoker's looking good. Smoke smells really good. We got a nice clean burning fire in here. A lot of times people talk about a thin blue line. To me, if that smoke smells right, it smells like, boy, it's something I like to eat, then it's a good fire that you got burning. We want to go ahead and put this on here. Get it up there. Get it shut. The last thing I like to do before I leave, let this thing sit for about 15 hours is, I like to put on just a handful of wood. A lot of times you see people wanting to put a lot of wood on a fire. I think a lot of times it's unnecessary. You can always add to this wood if you think it needs a little bit more, but it's hard to take away if you throw it all in one time. So just gonna put just a handful of wood in here. Now the hard part. Let's wait about 15 hours and see what comes out. All right, it's been about 15 hours now. It's about 10 a.m. in the morning. Smoker's running about 233 still. She's been pretty steady all night. Sometimes I always say just let the smoker go. I wanted her about 225, but 233 is not bad. So let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, she's looking good. It smells good too. A lot of people use thermometers to shake meats and stuff. Something like chicken, you want to make sure it's at least 165. Pork, 145 degrees Fahrenheit. With a brisket, you just merely want to take something and push in there to make sure that it's done. When this probe goes in, I just want to feel a little bit of resistance when I pull it back out. So let's see what we've got. Yep. And of course you get that little jiggle and you know she's good. This brisket's ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and take this brisket off the smoker, put it into a pan. We're gonna turn around and get her back inside. And now the hard part begins. She needs to rest. Just like a good steak, this brisket probably needs to sit to rest anywhere from 30 minutes up to an hour.
All right, folks, so this brisket's had a 15-hour smoke nap and we pulled it off. We went through the hard part of letting this sit. I actually let it sit for an hour. I know it's ready to be cut because I can put my hand over it right now and I feel a little bit of warmth coming out of it, but not a whole lot. So that means that it's allowed the meat to just kind of relax a little bit and it lets the juices distribute out between the cell walls in there. And that's kind of the thing is why you want to let your meat rest is like it's had so much heat and expanding, there's a lot of pressure, and when you cut it, all the juice runs out. But if you let it rest a little bit, aka cool down just a little bit, it kind of relaxes a bit and the juices don't run out and your product remains moist when you cut it. So let's see how we did today. First thing I want to point out is this is the primary that I talked about earlier with the meat running this way, the grain of the meat. And this is the secondary muscle, the point where the cells kind of, the meat's kind of running this way. So the first thing I want to do is very carefully, I like to separate the two. It's not necessary, but some people do, some people don't. And I put this aside for reasons that I'll share with you guys later. But let's see how we did. Give this nice brisket a cut. And one of the best parts right here to me is that first little snap, that first little tug. You can smell the smoke on it. You can see the moisture in this meat. It's not dry. Matter of fact, I'm starting to salivate, so apologize for that, and I apologize for the next little part I'm getting ready to do. Again, I ate a lot of meat in the store, and it's like that first bite that I always take of the brisket. It's always one of my favorite parts. That and the other favorite part that I like to do is this. This is that secondary point part that we talked about, the wet brisket. I love taking that and I love making this thing and turning it into burn-ins. But that's another story and another video. So for right now, I'd just like to say thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for allowing me to show you like how we do it at the lab. And I hope you guys can do the same thing that we do at the lab at your house for your family and friends to enjoy. Like I said, food's made to be enjoyed and shared, and hopefully this gets you guys, gets you folks wanting to cook a little bit more. So till next time, you guys look out. We got some more videos coming out. Be kind to one another, smile, pass that happiness around. We need it. Take care. Love y'all.